The attraction and integration of immigrants into modern society is one of the key challenges, politically and in terms of policy issues for the 21st century. Most notably, immigrants are seen to be one of the key solutions to fundamental demographic change of Western societies and some of the most important economic challenges. In a way, immigrants are seen to be a response to the lack of innovation and competitiveness of Western societies and economies. So in this respect, most Western countries have indeed engaged in some kind of international global competition for the brightest minds, and to attract those has been one of the key policy priorities of most states. At the very same time, however, this poses a critical policy challenge in terms of integrating these immigrants into society. How do you do you use the potential that immigrants bring for economic innovation, for prosperity and social sustainability? And these issues need to be addressed to actually take advantage of those things that we hope immigrants would bring to society. So how do we create equal opportunities for newcomers? Even Canadian society is characterized by a widening income gap between immigrants and the population born in Canada. How do we deal with issues of cultural and religious diversity? And how do we promote full integration in terms of political participation and so forth? All these questions are very high on the minds of policymakers these days. So if we now look to Europe and Canada, we would assume that given Canada's track record of being a settler society and the legacy of multiculturalism, we would assume that this is a one-way learning process, that European societies that are really on the brink only of adopting a modern immigration regime could benefit greatly from adopting experiences and best practice from the Canadian context. That might be the case. However, I see two main reasons why indeed we as Canadians and scholars in the audience in Canada should indeed consider what is happening in Europe. The first one is the very politically very momentous backlash against multiculturalism in Europe. There seems to be a very deep suspicion whether indeed there are any effective ways of integrating immigrants into Western societies. Is liberalism prepared to deal with issues of cultural and religious diversity? Do we see issues of a deep conflict, or as it is framed, a crisis of integration unfold in cities such as London and Paris, where we've seen youth violence, in particular of those with immigrant background? And also, if you think about the politicization, highly divisive in the European context, right-wing populist parties have tried to benefit from this issue and exploit it in comparative party politics. So far, Canada has been relatively immune to these influences. However, we should consider indeed that some of these debates and highly political debates and public conflicts might indeed come to Canada as well. The long-term impact of successfully integrating immigrants is an issue that we will have to deal with in Canada as well. Secondly, although at the national level, European societies are very much lagging behind Canada in terms of attracting and integrating immigrants, we see a host of very interesting, innovative practices at the regional and in particular the local urban level. Some of the cities in Europe have taken the initiative to come up with very interesting approaches to creating more inclusive communities, to integrating immigrants into social, political networks. And in this respect, with respect to the very dynamic form of multi-level governments in Europe, the increasingly important role of Europe, but also the regional and local level, I think Canada can actually see that innovative approaches to integrating immigrants come from various levels of government. In particular, there is a very distinct role for major urban contexts and cities in Canada to be played. So in these two respects, I do think that it is very much a two-way learning process with respect to the field of immigration and integration.